Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the natal chart of Nasim Aghdam, and as many of you may know, she was the person that was doing the shooting in the YouTube shooting at the headquarters of YouTube recently. And anyway, first off, as far as her chart goes, well, her chart, the sun was an explosive, volatile Aries, and I mean, obviously this can show a very acrimonious, hot-tempered, and confrontational and combative side to the nature. The basic want, or the basic wants, I should say, can be connected with those things I mentioned, connected with the sign now, or with the sun in Aries. Now, as far as you know, in the solar sunrise chart I did for her, I mean, the moon comes to 22 degrees Cancer. And okay, yes, it's in its dignity, but I mean, it's also, I mean, moon in Cancer obviously can be exceptionally sensitive. And 22nd degree in astrology, some may perceive this as the kill or be killed degree. And interestingly enough, this moon, that degree, the moon at 22 degrees in Cancer in the solar sunrise chart I cast for also coincided with the degree of the ascendant at that event chart for the shooting at the YouTube headquarters. So it almost seems like it was practically destined that she was going to be very prominent in that and figure in really in the public eye at that moment. And you're looking at the moon in Cancer in its dignity. Now, the thing about this too, I mean, obviously this does show, I think, the correlation with her and that prolific shooting at the place. And the thing about, you know, astrologically, now 6 of her 12 major astrological energies, and what I consider the major astrological energies are the 10 planets, the MC, the midheaven, and the ascendant. Now, 6 of those 12 in her chart were in water signs when I did the solar chart for. Now, likely, I mean, to me, that's an indicator that she likely was much more sensitive than the typical sun in Aries. And Jupiter conjunct the moon could, of course, amplify and exacerbate sensitive moon in Cancer energy, and especially perhaps with dealing with derisive and derogatory remarks and criticism and ridicule. Now, in the solar/sunrise chart, Mercury, okay, is in its detriment and fall in Pisces and retrograde, and fell in the 12th house, which of course would be considered its accidental detriment in fall. And however, I did see one positive thing anyway regarding her chart. She had a grand water trine involving a Mercury-Mars conjunction in Pisces in the 12th, Moon in Cancer in the 4th, and Uranus in Scorpio conjunct the 8th house cusp. Now, I think a lot of this could have been attributed somewhat to her success, at least to some degree, on YouTube, at least before. Apparently, she had been getting the channel demonetized and suppressing some material on it or what have you. Now, the thing about this is, as far as going back to her grand water trine, now this could give certain success using instinctive energy, intuition, sensitivity, and feeling. It can be very auspicious as long as one doesn't become self-satisfied and complacent and tend to relax, because you got to still utilize the energy. It could give a lot of natural ability, though, to accomplish a lot of things without really an overabundance of effort, but still certain effort is needed to make things happen with this configuration. Now, I mean, the Mercury in Pisces, I mean, I think played a strong role in the certain success with filmography and the YouTubing in general. And the Mars, of course, gave more energy. And the Mars conjunction to it, of course, amplified as far as the energy level for this. Now, the moon in Cancer, I think, could show the emotional need to be the rescuer for others. And one article online stated that she was a promoter for the rights of animals. And Now, and I think that was coming through in the video somehow. As far as it being in the 4th house, that indicated that she was very much probably at home with it, and it was good for her emotional security. Now, the other proponent in this grand water trine configuration, Uranus and Scorpio, well, that perhaps shows the success to some degree on YouTube, showing somewhat bizarre sexual-oriented things. I mean, apparently in one video, apparently she had discarded a dress and she was wearing to unveil phony breasts, and the message on them read, quote, "Don't trust your eyes," end quote. So obviously she had a little humor mixed in with that as well, and I think maybe her humor, though it might have seemed warped to some people, maybe that could have been attributed to her Jupiter making the conjunction to her moon. So in Jupiter, if I'm not mistaken, was at 29 degrees, the full culmination of the planet. So anyway. Now, she only had one major astrological energy in air in that solar chart, and that was Pluto in Libra, which of course is a generational planet, and so many people had it. It's not really that much significance, I don't think, by sign. Now, this combined, I think, between that and coupled with the fact she had Mercury in its detriment in fall by sign and the house placement, and Mercury was retrograde, I think it might have made it difficult, at least at times, to communicate lucidly and in a perspicacious manner about things that may have really been troubling her. Now, Pluto, of course, is a singleton. It was a singleton in her chart, so there could be a certain emphasis on this. I mean, she had Pluto in the solar chart I did. It was conjunct the 7th house cusp, so it can show that maybe they're really the destructive relationships, perhaps in upheavals, power struggles connected them might have been very strongly emphasized and pronounced. I wouldn't be surprised if they were. Now, also too, she had her black moon Lilith in Leo in the 5th house. Now, this suggests perhaps a domineering, even tyrannical nature, an arrogant nature, perhaps in connection with love relationships, and she didn't want perhaps that side to be unveiled. Now, also, speaking of Leo energy, she had transit North Node in Leo in the 5th house, so perhaps there was some kind of direction or destiny, perhaps, to have dramatic situations in connection with matters of the heart, unfortunately, and something that was going to be very attention-getting and get notoriety for very negative reasons, of course. Now, I understand she likely talked about how YouTube was suppressing at least some of her content and bothered her strongly. But I'm wondering, though, if there may have been some other things that were going on that we weren't cognizant of as a public or aware of, you know, as far as privately goes. Now, according to Wikipedia.org, the motive of the crime was YouTube demonetization. Now, sadly, she had transit Venus in Taurus. Transit Venus in Taurus was closing in on her natal Chiron in Taurus in that 1st house. So this suggests perhaps she was going through some emotional suffering, perhaps in connection with a rather stubborn maybe relationship or obstinate one, and maybe and perhaps was prominent as far as a role astrologically in the gunshot wound that was inflicted on what I believe was her boyfriend and at least 2 or maybe 3 other people. Now, or at least, well, the one, as far as that goes, as far as transit transit Venus closing in on her natal Chiron, I think that could have been the connection with the gunshot wound to what I believe was her to her boyfriend, is what I'm saying, and not necessarily connected as far as the other people, though, because of course Venus is about relationships. So anyway. Now, also at the time, Mars was in, in her chart, and her solar chart. Mars was in her 12th house, Now, this could show that acrimonious and angry actions can lead to the self-undoing, and also could possibly lead to incarceration, which obviously it would have if she didn't wind up shooting herself. Now, also, she had that her Mars placement close to the fixed star sheet, and that, of course, that position can indicate sometimes something murderous or really great, strong tribulation. Also, another thing, too, is that transit Chiron was also making a close conjunction to that natal Mars, perhaps giving greater propensity for some kind of wounds being suffered through gunfire. Now, also, she had a cardinal T-square configuration consisting of an opposition between the Sun in Aries and Pluto in Libra, and both of those planets being squared by the Moon in Cancer in the 4th house, and of course the Moon in Cancer then becomes the focal point of the configuration. Now, when you have a cardinal T-square, it can really give a lot of fortitude and make the person very action-oriented and wanting to attain many things, but yet what can happen is people that have this may expend energy, perhaps abundant of energy, on frivolous confrontations and combat. And really, as far as the configuration goes, breaking it down in her chart, now with the Sun opposite Pluto, there could be may have been a pole between the basic wants, and really, Aries is about, of course, attention. It could be about attention getting in just things of a very egocentric nature. Now, and the torn between those basic wants and with Pluto conjunct the 7th house, it could be the other thing being pulled toward would be upheavals and crisis situations in relationships. Now, the Moon in Cancer in the 4th house being the focal point of this configuration, that could also be the point of overemphasis and over-accentuation. And maybe this could have been where because of these issues, maybe she was dealing with that opposition with the Sun and Pluto, it might have been really getting that emotional need for that safety and security, which could be very Cancerian-like, of course. And also, too, if there were difficulties, say another way that could have manifested that configuration, the cardinal T-square she had, could also have been another example. Could be dealing with people that were somewhat maybe domineering, obsessive, manipulative, and succumbing to that to some degree, maybe, and maybe dealing with those people conflicting with her basic wants. As a result of that, the point of overemphasis or over-accentuation, what have you, being that Moon in Cancer, could be really maybe emotional, maybe just becoming the emotional need to be brooding and to be sulking and pouting and in the home, and really maybe using that home as that place of refuge to perhaps deal with the opposition of that configuration. So and also and perhaps in being in Cancer for a very protracted period, doing that the pouting and the sulking or what have you, being reticent for a prolonged period of time, because remember, the Moon is reactionary, so, and that could be the way of reacting to just something like that. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for the Nasim Aghdam natal chart. And stay tuned next time, where I'm going to be talking about Conor McGregor. And I'm going to be talking about astrology in Conor McGregor. It's not going to be like a delineation overview of his natal chart. But what I'm going to talk about is there was something happened recently with him when he went on, I guess, I don't know if you want to call it, no, maybe not a rampage or a tirade, but he had an angry, acrimonious moment where he had apparently, I think he had taken a dolly and threw it at some bus, and he had turned himself into police, evidently. And I want to talk about maybe some transits that he's been getting, and maybe even some things in his natal chart that might be related to perhaps this kind of behavior. So anyway, people, two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel, but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.